Good evening.
Good evening, everyone, to those who have joined a little bit earlier. We are going to wait just a couple of minutes to get started, okay? We are here. Let's just wait for more people to join this meeting. Thank you.
You can hear me. Okay.
Yes, we could hear you there.
Yes, I can hear you there.
I don't think we can hear you, Feride.
You can't?
No, you might
Oh.
have to change your audio settings.
Oh my God. Let me go to the settings.
I can hear Farida.
You can hear me?
No,
I can hear
we
you
can't
loud and
hear
clear.
Microphone. It is.
Hello, everyone. Again, good evening. We are just making sure Faride we can hear Faride. She's checking some, I guess, audio settings. In the meantime, people are connecting, so it's all good. Faride, you might have to restart your computer or just check audio settings. No, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now? No.
Yes, I can hear. I can hear Farida.
You can hear me now.
Yes, I could hear you before as well. Yeah.
Great.
I can hear you
I can hear
too.
you. Yeah.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Perfect. Wonderful. All right. So everybody is now ready to get started. Farida, would you like to share your slides? And in the meantime, I'm going to welcome everyone.
Okay.
Perfect. Wonderful. Good. People are still connecting. Great.
Can you
Thank you
see?
so. Yes, we can see your slides. Wonderful, Farida. Thank you so much. Well, good evening, everyone. Perhaps good morning, good afternoon, if you are in a different time zone. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's a pleasure to have you here. My name is Mayra Ruiz Castro, and I'm Director of Borderlines. For those of you who are joining us for the very first time, Borderlines is an interdisciplinary research collective committed to social justice and radical experimental methodologies. And we like working interdisciplinarily within Queen Mary faculties and schools, and also with global partners and colleagues. And today we are delighted to host the first workshop linked to our residency fellowship program, which we just launched this year and we are very excited about. Dr. Feride Kumbasa, she's our very first resident fellow, and she's also a feminist migration scholar and community researcher whose work bridges academia, activism, and creative practice. Her research has explored the intersections of migration, gender, labor, and urban change, and she has used participatory and decolonial methodologies, which she will be sharing with us today. She completed her PhD on Turkish and Kurdish women's experiences in Hackney in East London at the University of Roehampton here in London. Thank you, Faride, for organizing and facilitating this session. I'll leave the floor to you. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Mayra. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you for everyone to joining us today. Yes, I am a community. I consider myself as a community activist and migration scholar. Because much of how I think about research comes from long-standing work in the voluntary and community sector. I worked for many years with NGOs and local charities in London and especially in Hackney, and I led Image a Women's Center for 8 years, where I developed and managed services for women experiencing violence and abuse. This practical experience fundamentally shaped how I think about migration, inequality, and knowledge. Working closely with migrant women around everyday struggles made it clear, very clear to me, that women hold deep, complex knowledge about their own lives, and yet this knowledge is often overlooked and mispresented in research or policy. What I am sharing today is very much an introduction. In an hour, it is not possible to go into full details of implementation. Instead, I want to share the questions that emerged from my community work and how they later informed my academic research. Particularly, my focus was on spatial justice, diasporic belonging, and structural inequalities. If there is an interest, I'd be very happy to continue this conversation in a follow-up session. What follows now is not a blueprint or a framework for decolonial feminist research, but it is an invitation to think together about how decolonial and feminist research on migration might look. The questions I want to share with you today didn't emerge at the end of my PhD. They were there from the very beginning. Early on, I kept asking myself, how is knowledge on migration produced and who benefits from it? I was particularly concerned with how migrant women's lives are often filtered through categories of success, failure, integration, or deservingness. A moment that crystallized this for me happened in Hackney when a woman I was speaking with said, people come, ask their questions, we tell our stories, that nothing changes. So what will happen this time? I didn't have a neat answer, but that question became an ethical anchor. It pushed me to think not just about what I was researching, but why and what for whom. For my PhD project, I studied Turkish and Kurdish women's economic and social political contributions to the London Borough of Hackney. I focused on women who arrived from the early 1980s onwards, many of whom worked in textile factories, family businesses, and informal economies. I choose Hackney deliberately. It is a place profoundly shaped by migrant women's labor, especially Turkish and Kurdish migrant women labor. The food scenery in Hackney is dominated by this community. Yet those contributions are largely absent from official histories, regeneration narratives, and official maps. So one question I kept returning to was, how can a place be built through migrant women's labor and yet tell its story without them? Very early on, I realized that I couldn't take migration research itself for granted. Much of what we now recognize as migration knowledge was produced through colonial projects, counting, classifying, naming, managing populations. This way of knowing didn't simply describe people's lives. They helped govern them. This is why Linda Twine-Smith famously describes research as one of the dirtiest words in the vocabulary of indigenous and colonized peoples. In decolonizing methodologies, she argues that research has historically been a tool of imperialism, a way of taking knowledge, reclassifying it, and returning it as scientific truth, while excluding the people who produced that knowledge in the first place. For many marginalized communities, including migrants and racialized groups, research itself can be experienced as extractive or even violent. So when we talk about rethinking migration research, we are not just talking about better methods. We are talking about rethinking what counts as knowledge, whose voices are heard, and who research ultimately serves. This pushed me to engage with critics showing how migration research is historically entangled with colonialism, border control, and population management. I began asking, how can I do it differently? How the research become a tool for solidarity, care, and social transformation rather than extraction. I turned to feminist epistemologies because they help me understand why women's everyday knowledges are often dismissed as anecdotal or emotional. The colonial critics take this further by asking whose knowledge becomes recognized as legitimate knowledge. Western academia has historically defined what counts as intelligible knowledge, while other ways of knowing are dismissed or only accepted once they are translated into Western concepts. Sabah Mahmood, for example, show how migrant and racialized lives are often made legible through categories that sanitize, simplify, or typologize lived experience. This created an ongoing tension for me between wanting to make women's experiences visible and worrying about reproducing otherness in the process. One of the most deliberate choices I made was to treat migrant women's experiences as sources of knowledge, not as raw material to be processed elsewhere. Women are experts of their own lives. They hold deep knowledge about work, borders, care, and belonging. I ask questions in these areas because these were domains where women already had analytical insights, even if institutions didn't recognize it as theory. This wasn't about romanticizing experience, but about asking, why is this kind of knowledge so rarely taken seriously? As the research progressed, I became increasingly careful about how I approached experience. Women were not simply telling their lives. They were interpreting them. They were choosing what to share, what to withhold, and how to frame their stories. I noticed how often stories were shaped around hard work, sacrifice, and resilience. This led me to ask what kind of stories feel legitimate to tell and which ones remain silent, unsayable. This slide reflects something I encountered repeatedly in both my community work and my research. There is a pressure on migrant women to tell deserving stories. Many women felt their lives had to be narrated in particular ways, emphasizing resilience, sacrifice, or success in order to be seen as legitimate migrants. And it is understandable. These narratives make sense in contexts where migration is constantly questioned and justified. At the same time, ordinary experiences such as uncertainty, ambivalence, frustration, contradiction were often silenced, not because they were unimportant, but because they didn't fit dominant narratives of legitimacy. This became especially clear when women navigated complex immigration routes. Some of my participants entered on student visas, others through asylum or work pathways, often using whatever legal routes were available to them. And this produced official identities that didn't always align with their private experiences of self. For example, they might be getting their legal status through spouse visa, but in reality, they might be fleeing from state violence. But because of the bureaucracy of asylum and and difficulty of seeking asylum, they might end up in getting the legal status through spouse visa. So that actually created conflict between their official identities as, husband or wife, with their private experiences, such as being a refugee. These parallel narratives shaped how women related to institutions, employers, neighbors, and even their own community members or families. Performing belonging often meant managing these multiple selves. At that point, one of my key questions became, how can research make space for complexity without reproducing the very logic of legitimacy that constrained what women feel able to say? Initially, I focused on invisibility. My aim was to actually make women's labor, care work, and economic contribution, all kind of contribution, to be visible. But I couldn't ignore another pattern, which was hypervisibility. Migrant women, particularly Muslim migrant women, were often highly visible in public discourse, but almost always as problems. Especially as mothers, they are blamed for youth unrest or failed integration. So I began asking, how can women be invisible as workers and contributors, yet hypervisible as moral or social problems? That question helped me to see how power operates through representation. Another key question was about time. Migration is often imagined as linear and generally as taken departure, arrival, integration. But women's lives didn't follow that pattern. Migration was ongoing, marked by waiting, repetition, uncertainty, return, or migrating again. So I began to think of migration not as an event, but as a continuous way of life, shaping everyday decisions, everyday relationships, not only in the settled country, but their relationships with the family or friends in the country of arrival or in transnational space. I also became uncomfortable with how migrant women were often treated as a homogeneous group. While intersectionality is frequently used to expose hierarchies between migrants and wider society, the diversity among migrant women is often overlooked, reproducing a new form of otherness. Differences of class, ethnicity, religion, language, the political history mattered deeply in women's everyday lives. I began asking questions not only about women's relationship to the host society members, but also about power within migrant communities. I created this chart, I think it was during my validation exam, and with Myra's advice, because I was constantly talking about the intersections within the Turkish and Kurdish community. And because there were lots of intersections, social locations, it became really complicated. And Myra suggested that I should produce a slide, a chart, to put all of those together to see how I can actually do the analysis in comparison with the settled society and with the communities themselves. So I'm so thankful to Myra for suggesting that, because it made my life easier. and it showed a visual way of how hierarchies of social locations, both within Turkish and Kurdish communities and in relation to the wider society. Much research that I read rightly focuses on intersections between migrant women and the settled or host society, however you call it. For example, how gender intersects with the migration status, racialization, religion, or access to social capital in Britain. These are shown on the right-hand side of the slide here. What is often overlooked, however, are the intersections within the migrant communities, which is on the left-hand side of the slide. Women do not arrive as blank slates. Their social positions are already shaped through hierarchies that existed before migration. In my research, for example, this meant paying close attention to the distinctions shaped by ethnicity, religion, language, rural, urban background, and class. For example, being Kurdish in relation to Turkish national identity, being Alevi in relation to Sunni dominance, or speaking Kurdish or Zazaki in relation to Turkish as the official language. Then I look at the translocational lens, which helps us to see how these intersections are not erased by migration, but reworked across space and time, across national borders, political regimes, and life trajectories. Migration also produces new hierarchies, like social status, refugees, undocumented workers, visa holders, later citizens, and most of my participants had different legal status. This legal status becomes a powerful axis of differentiation, shaping access to work, welfare, housing, mobility, and security. Therefore, how belonging is performed. At the same time, power is not fixed. Some women marginalized before migration may gain resources or status after settlement. When traveling back, access to income, passports, or transnational networks can reposition them as more powerful than before. So intersectionality here is not about adding categories together. It is about understanding how power travels, how inequalities are carried, reshaped, and sometimes intensified through migration. This helped me understand belonging and power as mobile, as shifting, and historically contingent. Because I am Turkish and the migrant, I was often assumed to be an insider, but that never felt fully accurate. I shared language, cultural references, and everyday spaces with many of the women I worked with. This often helped to build trust and facilitated access to stories that might not have emerged otherwise. But with many others, I didn't. My relationship with Kurdish participants, my relationship with Alevi women and women from different class backgrounds or rural backgrounds constantly reminded me that insider and outsider position are partial and shifting. Recognizing this instability is not a failure of method. It is an ethical necessity. It forces us to remain accountable, to listen carefully, and to resist the temptation to claim authority over others' lives. So rather than asking whether we are insiders or outsiders, the more important question becomes, how do we work responsibly within these shifting power positions? How do we remain open to being challenged and changed by the research process itself? Therefore, the reflexibility became a way of staying with that discomfort rather than resolving it, and remaining attentive to how power operated in the research encounter. All of these led me to think differently about participation. I didn't want to reproduce the idea of giving voice, a concept that assumes researchers hold the power to grant it. Women already had voices. The question was, who was listening? On what terms? Research became a shared responsibility involving negotiation, accountability, and care. I use participatory methods not because they are automatically more inclusive, but because they allow different ways of knowing to shape the research. They push us to unlearn expert authority, to stay open to new, unexpected insights, and to take women's lived experiences seriously as sources of knowledge, not just as data. Participation doesn't remove power, but it can make power visible and contestable. Sorry. So I chose oral history and life story methods as a way to both learn and unlearn. And also, oral history was already a familiar mode of knowledge transmission for many of my participants. For Alevi and Kurdish women living under Turkish state scrutiny, culture and religion were often sustained through oral forms. Life stories were shared while sitting together, walking through neighborhoods, or engaging with photographs. Walking interviews in particular shifted control over space and memory. So places prompted stories rather than my questions. For women not literate in their own language, visual methods helped unsettle linguistic and academic dominance, especially when you are discussing complicated concepts like belonging or identity. When I talk about critical cartography, sorry, let me go back to. So these methods didn't remove power. They exposed it. They enabled what I call critical cartographies of Turkish and Kurdish women's lives in Hackney. When I talk about critical cartography, I always start from this idea that maps are not neutral. Space is not neutral. Maps show streets, buildings, regeneration plans, but they leave out women's labor, care, and everyday resistance. Avan defines mapping otherwise is a process of reimagining and representing space through the perspectives of those excluded from official maps, particularly racialized, migrant, and gendered subjects. In my research, mapping was used during go-along interviews to trace women's everyday spatial practices, routes of work, care, safety, fear, and belonging became analytical material for me. Ridley Road Market is where this approach really comes alive. During a go-along interview, one of the participants, Rüya, took me there. She's a Kurdish woman who arrived in London as a political refugee in 1989. Ridley Road Market is a long, so this is her map. Before we were doing the walk along interview, we were sitting down and she was drawing a map to where she wants to take me. And this is part of the Ria's map. And she wanted to take me to Ridley Road Market because she had interest. She said it was the first market that she went in London. It was also her first work. Garment factory was situated in the Market Road. And also she had this demonstration. During that demonstration, she distributed leaflet in the market. So Ridley Road Market is a long-standing hub of commerce and community life, established in the late 19th century and formalized in around 1930s. And it grew alongside successive waves of migration in Hackney, serving Jewish, Caribbean, Vietnamese, Turkish Kurdish, and African diasporas. Ria's story helps me explain what I mean by decolonial and feminist cartography. As we walked through the Ridley Road Market, she described it as one of the first places where she felt a sense of familiarity in a completely new world. On her first Saturday in the UK, her brother took her to the market to do shopping. She needed a duvet cover, but she didn't know the English word for it. And her brother didn't speak English either. Yet, the brother led her straight to the right stall. And then she realized that there is a large sign in Turkish saying duvet covers and explain the prices. For Rüya, this was striking. In Turkey, Kurdish language and identity were suppressed, and she had never seen Kurdish on a public sign. Yet here, migrant languages were visible in the market. Her memories of Ridley Road in 1989 does also not only produce a cartography that is the market space as a diasporic space where lots of different languages mangled, but also produced a counter cartography of Turkish history, how she experienced the Turkish state in Turkey. But Ridley Road Market was not only a place of comfort for her, it was also political space. Rüya later became involved in a women's group campaigning against domestic violence, and she returned to the market to distribute leaflets with other women. Some men from the Turkish Kurdish community, from her community, reacted negatively, questioning why women were organizing publicly and shaming men in the community. It became physical, encounter became physical, and the stallholders and the customers from diverse communities who were there on that Saturday came to their aid and supported them. The market became a space of tension, negotiation, and solidarity. Ria's memories show how everyday spaces like markets become sites of resistance, where women claim visibility, build networks, and reshape community life. Through her story, Ridley Road is remapped not as a neutral shopping street, but as a lived political space of migrant women's presence and struggle. So when I map Ridley Road through women's stories, I see different geography shaped by labor, care, belonging, and feminist resistance. This is what I mean by mapping otherwise, or mapping the space through women's stories. Let me talk about the pictures on this slide. These are from Ridley Road. So on the left-hand side, there are two Kurdish women. There is a long-term stall. At the last time I went there, they weren't there, but they run this stall more than 7-8 years. So two Kurdish women making gözleme. Gözleme is a Kurdish pastry. And their stall was at the end of the market, and most of the market stall holders and customers were buying gözleme. And this is actually a visual representation of critical cartography, because it shows that Ridley Road Market is a diasporic space where you can find different foods from different diasporas. And also it shows an economic space where women's labor creates the market itself. And the picture down is showing a commercial activity where woman is buying something from the stall holder. But behind that, there was a building which is called Ridley Road Village Shopping Center. And the ground floors are shops, different shops, permanent shops rather than stalls. But on top of those shops, there used to be in the building, I think it is 3 levels building, there used to be many garment making workshops, and Ria worked for one of them. And she learned how to sew. She earned enough money to look after her family back home. And she also organized with the other workers to go on a strike to improve the conditions in the market, in the workshop, and also increase the wages. On the right-hand side is taken again from Ridley Road Market. It is I think it's a demonstration for justice for prisoners, and it shows that market is a political space not for Turkish Kurdish women, but for many different communities. And it becomes a space where different encounters take place. And this is showing the political activity. And the bottom picture is the Riya's Women's Group. This is the demonstration that they had against violence against women. And before this demonstration, Rüya and her friends distributed flyers in the market and got that backlash from the community. In the center is the poster that was produced, designed by the users' input, the customers of the Ridley Road Market, and also Ridley Road trade holders, because at the moment the council has plans to knock down this building where Riya's garment factory is, and build residence that is suitable to gentrified Hackney. So trade holders and users actually came together, or as a group organized a number of campaigns. And during one of the campaign, the people were asked what Ridley Road Market mean to them. And from the outcome, this poster is designed. I know there are lots of small writings, but I can say it says Ridley Road Market is more than a street market. It is readable that diversity is there. It is studios for music and dance. Because there are lots of art studios in that building now, since the garment factory is closed down. There are the local African Caribbean music is being produced in those studios. It says it is a community hub, and it says it should be kept for the community interest. So these are the visual critical cartographies of Ridley Road Market. I'm going to stop here with my presentation, and I just pass it on to you with my question. And it is now your turn to think or share with us that the questions that you find yourself returning to again and again during your research or community work, just share those questions with us and tell us why those questions matter to you. The way, Myra kindly created a Mentimeter for us. So there is a QR code. You can actually take the QR code with your mobile phone to access the Mentimeter. If not, you can actually go to the website through menti.com and put the passcode to reach the shared Mentimeter so that we can all see each other's questions and answers. If you have already got into it, I am going to stop sharing. Let me do it myself as well. Stop sharing and pass it on to Myra. Shall I stop sharing now?
Thank you, Farida. Thank you so much. Yes, thank you for sharing this knowledge and insights with so much clarity. Also with lots of humility and respect for those you have researched. So what I'm going to do is to share now my screen so that people can see people's contributions. Here we go. We have the first one. Can you see my screen? Can you see the
Yes, we can.
Perfect. There we go. All right. So just please keep up keep your comments. Sorry, your answers to Farida's question, to the question she posed to you all. Just keep them coming, and we're gonna let them run here for a couple of minutes. And you can use the QR code, as Frida said, maybe with your phones, or you can just open, Google Chrome or whatever you use, and type menti.com and use the code you see on the screen to access the slide. Yeah. Farida, we have quite a lot of insights now, inputs here. So I can scroll them down. You can go one by one. You tell me what to do, where to move the screen towards, yeah?
Yes, I can't see the below. I think they are all great questions. I mean, I totally agree that there is a state definition of mother and ordinary practices of mothering. Yeah, if you are doing a research on motherhood, that would be one of the questions to go back to constantly. And yes, we mentioned the resources ethically, using resources ethically amplify voices outside of academia. Who am I to undertake this research when I am neither Turkish, Jewish, nor Tunisian? Uh,
I guess that's a question that many of us, might ask ourselves when it's almost like a questioning whether we have the right to research groups of people to whom we might feel we don't belong to, right, or we don't represent faithfully. That's how I interpret that contribution.
I mean, as I said, insider and outsider position shifts. So it depends on what you are researching, even though, for example, even though you are a white woman from privileged background, there is always something that you share with the other woman. And that makes you insider of that group, and also outsider for other social locations that you don't share with your group. And I think as researcher we need to understand our positions. It doesn't have to be you don't have to be insider, you don't have to be part of the community that you are researching. It is important to understand that your position and constantly challenge and open to be unlearning and open to be stepping outside your normality to see different ways of lives, I think. An intergenerational research, how do we get elders to share their experiences they have tried to protect us from? These are all important questions, and I am not an expert to answer all of those questions. I shared my questions, and I shared how I processed my questions within, how I integrated those questions within my research process. And I am sure you are all thinking about how you can integrate all those questions into your research process to make your research better for the communities that you are researching on. If my own culture and biases came from a deeply colonial perspective. Yes, that's one of the things. We always have biases. That is why questioning positionality is always important. And understanding that the narratives, even our own narratives, our own understanding, the language we use is the outcome of colonial projects. So we need to be aware of it and constantly question it. I don't have any other answers. we have to be critical about whatever we are saying. I mean, when I was writing my PhD, I was writing one word and thinking, no, this word, this sentence didn't fit. I mean, it can be understood this way. Is it right that I am writing in this way? Can I claim this as a truth? So constantly, I questioned every sentence I wrote. And it was a very painful process. I wouldn't recommend to anyone. Yeah, that's what we do. Yeah. I don't have any other, but they are very interesting questions here. Amazing. I wonder about the specific participatory approaches I can use which won't overburden the expert participants, but which are meaningful.
I really love all these questions and thoughts people are having in this space. I think it shows that you know, people are questioning who they want to be and as researchers, right? And how they want to conduct their research. And it shows a lot of, yes, awareness and compassion. And I think that's very important, right? I really liked, Farida, what you said about, you know, research can be experienced as violent. Right?
Yes.
And it's our responsibility as researchers, as scholars, to question how we can make sure our research is not only an act of extraction. We questioning the power relations, are we shifting those power relations? Are we not only telling people's stories, right? But are we letting them letting them interpret their own stories rather than doing the interpretation for them? I think you have raised wonderful points here, and thank you all. I think these are fantastic contributions. I wonder whether there is a way of sharing these questions with the audience. We'll find a way of sharing this.
That would be great, actually.
Yes, and Faride, would you like me to share your last slide?
Yes, that would be.
Yes. All right. Okay. So I'm gonna move on.
Thank you.
Of course, I think this is the one. Yes.
So at the end, I just wanted to say that decolonial feminist research is an ongoing commitment to the communities, doing with the communities rather than on them, to remain accountable and to keep asking how research might support more just ways of living together. So it is research. We need to take it research as changing lives. We need to, at the beginning of our research, we need to ask, why am I doing this research? Who is going to benefit from it? And how the people I'm researching with can benefit from it. But at the end of the research, we need to go back and see. I'm not claiming that we make all research make impact, but all research actually disturb dominant narratives, unsettle them, and this is an impact itself. So the main purpose of the research should be creating social change through the knowledge of the people's that is derived from their everyday life experiences. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Farida. Thank you so much. This has been fantastic. I wonder whether people in the last 5 minutes we have, or so 5 to 10 minutes, is there any question you might want to make to Faride? You can write your questions in the chat box. You can also raise your hand and unmute yourselves. Questions, thoughts, anything you would like to share with Faride, please feel free to do it. All right, we're getting some thank you messages
Yeah.
in the chat.
Thank you.
Is there any particular question? All right. Well, thank you, Freide. Thank you so much. This was a wonderful presentation. I really enjoyed it, and I think the thoughtful comments and questions people shared on Mentimeter show that your presentation really resonated with them. So that's fantastic to see. All right, so just very quickly, thank you, Farida. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you
for
so
being
much.
here, and
Thank
for your
you.
nice comments.
Thank you. And just before people start disconnecting, so we here at Borderlines we run numerous events, from workshops to seminar series and other more creative activities. And I would just like to bring your attention to other events that Farida will be hosting in the coming months. Farida's our resident fellow. She'll be participating in a panel on mothering across borders, again focusing on East London with other colleagues. This is going to take place in February. A reflexive session on unspeakable intimacies, a very interesting, a more intimate event where Diana Kane, Borderlines member, will be reflecting on her experiences, childhood experiences in South Africa. And then Farida will also very kindly organize a walk in Hackney. And I'm really excited about this event. Remembering the past, observing the present, imagining the future. So she will take us to all those roads, streets, and markets that she researched and introduced very briefly today. So please come join us. You will see them live and experience them, embody them. And then finally, we also have our Global Dialogue series, which is the flagship event that Borderlines organizes annually. This year, we are focusing on the topic of AI, voice, and decolonial knowledge. The series is composed by 4 seminars. The first one took place in December. We have 3 more seminars taking place in February, March, and June. Please join us and keep connected. You can keep updated on our LinkedIn page. We also have a newly launched website. There is still work to do there, but please, you are welcome to join us and connect for future events. Thank you very much. Thank you, Faride, as well. Have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me, is there a link to that webpage for the event? Can't hear you.
Myra, we can't hear you.
Yes, sorry, Paula. Yes, we have a. Is there any particular event you're interested in? Because I don't think we
place the post in the. Can you place the link to the webpage in the chat?
Yes, I can do that. Just give me a second. I'm going to stop sharing my screen actually, so that I can go. Where are you joining us from?
Canada.
I recognize an accent. Yeah.
If you have the link to that LinkedIn, I didn't realize you had a
Yes.
separate LinkedIn page.
So this is our website, yes, and our link is, just give me a second.
I'm sorry I arrived a little late, but I'm interested in this research. So especially since it's interdisciplinary research, that's what I do. I'm particularly interested in the feminist solidarities. So thanks very much. I appreciate this.
Thank you.
Just going to copy them. Just one moment.